Welcome in, everybody. We are at Country Field in Gainesville, Florida, recapping Game 1 of Super South Carolina falls to Florida. They had a late rally, but unfortunately, the Gamecocks weren't able to overcome it and fall to the Gators 5-4. Intern Joe is with us. We're going to have us shortly. Intern Joe, just your initial thoughts on tonight's game.
It's a tough one. Obviously, when it comes down to it, it's a couple clutch pitching moments. Will's got to deliver. He hung a couple pitches that just got away from him, and that sucks when you're South Carolina because, you played pretty well for the big portion of that game, and then it just comes down to one or two mistakes, and you lose that one. So tough one to lose, but luckily you got, two more chances at it, or one more chance if you can't get it done. But hopefully two more cracks at it coming out.
And we'll talk about it more with Joey, I'm sure. I know we talked about it a lot going into this game. I know we talked about it a lot following Sunday's performance and all regional, really. Just the impact that Will McGillis gives you with his bat, being back in the lineup, that spark, being able to take the pressure off the other guys. We saw it early on, and of course, McGillis was the reason why South Carolina was able to cut the deficit to 1 in the 9th inning. 2 home runs from McGillis tonight, though. You can't say enough good things about the kid. I really, truly believe it starts with him.
Yeah, McGillis was clutch. And again, you got him back. We saw how well he did in the regional tournament. Really, really, really big to have him back. Another bat we talked about was Wimmer. Wimmer did well tonight as well. Good to have him back. But yeah, the injured guys are fully back again. Like I said tonight, I don't necessarily think it came down to really anybody. It was just 1 or 2 pitches that you kind of left hanging, and that happens sometimes. That's baseball.
That is baseball, and a guy that knows that better than anyone is a former Gamecock joining us today, Joey Pankake. We appreciate it, Joey. I know that we all anticipated this game, or at least we're hoping this game was going to start at 6, and instead, around that 8 o'clock hour when we would be getting ready to do a post-game show, it turned into we're still haven't started yet, so we appreciate you hopping on. Just your initial thoughts tonight, though. I know you've been in situations like this, and you understand the magnitude of being able to play in a super regional. Just what you saw from tonight from both teams.
Yeah, it was. It seems like it came down to the long ball. McGillis, he hit 2. He hit a leadoff home run there, and then 1 in the 9th. And for a while there, Florida scored all their runs on home runs up until that last run. So they capitalized on some mistakes, and maybe we missed 1 or 2 shots there. And I think it was in the 5th inning. Seemed like a call that didn't go our way, and followed by a hit, and you wonder what things would have been like with that, but I guess we'll never know.
And the thing about it, too, is I go back to around, I think it was at the 5th inning, when you had the no call and the interference, and I know that really, to me, it really seemed like things started to change after that from a momentum standpoint, right? You get the out call right there. South Carolina, a couple batters later, they go for the steal, get thrown out at second base. Florida gets up for the inning, they hit a home run. I say that because, and I'm sure, I get it, Gamecock fans. I'm sure a lot of you are upset tonight with the umpire. I get that. I'm not excusing it, but I don't want to waste all our time talking about that tonight, okay? Because South Carolina had their opportunities tonight. When you have something like that happen to you, Joey, what is the mood in the dugout, and how do you try to overcome something like that? Because again, as Scott Wingo was telling me yesterday, and I'm sure you would agree with this, at the end of the day, it's still baseball. It's still everything that you've done all season. The biggest difference is everything's magnified.
Yeah. So what it comes down to is one play is usually not going to change the outcome of a game. And I don't think that was the case here. I don't think that one play is going to change anything. Maybe it helped shift some momentum one way or the other, but that wasn't the turning point of the game. So you get back in the dugout, you got to realize, hey, there's a lot of game left. We got a lot of game left to play, and go out and keep playing the ball that we know we can.
Yeah, Joey, obviously momentum's big in college baseball, especially in these playoff type of atmospheres. How do you bounce back from a game like today? What are you telling or what's going on? What are the conversations going on in that locker room? And how do you come out tomorrow and rebound better than you did today?
Well, what it comes down to is you had to win 2 games anyways. So just win the next 2. Win the next 2, you go to Omaha, and that was the goal all along. So you gotta stay up. Remember how talented your team is, and go win 2 in a row now.
What can you take from tonight, though, that makes you feel good? Because I know it's not – look, this time of the year, moral victories, I know no one's really going to be – especially people that are watching. I'm sure people don't care about that. But with that being said, what can you take from tonight that can make you feel good, knowing that, hey, there's an opportunity tomorrow, and, of course, now their backs are pushed up against the wall, and they're going to have to win the next 2?
I thought we hit the ball okay. They threw some good arms, and obviously Florida has a lot of good arms. But we stacked several hits on there early in the game. We played good defense, and outside of just a few pitches, I thought our pitchers really held their own. They made a few mistakes, and Florida capitalized, but that's baseball. So you got to keep playing your game, try to minimize the mistakes, and take what you're given.
You're in a situation now, though, you have to come back. You have to win tomorrow. What is these next 24 hours like for this team? Or obviously it won't be a night game, but, these next whatever until you're back on the field tomorrow.
Yeah, obviously the delay made it a little quicker of a turnaround than what they were expecting, but I think they'll be able to bounce back. I mean, these guys are young. I remember being that age 10 years ago, and they'll be able to get a little bit of rest, and they'll wake up fine and ready to go. They've shown a lot of fire, and they've gone through a lot this year. So I think it's in there for them to show up and have a good game tomorrow and carry that into the next day as well.
Real quick, I just want to point this out, Bill. Asking why is Kingston so loyal to Tippett. I'll say this, though. Tippett had another phenomenal bunt tonight, and the very next batter drives him in. So without being able to move the guy over. And again, Joey, you would know a hell of a lot better than me. Every guy has their role, and I understand. I mean, you talk about a program like South Carolina. I understand the question, Bill. But again, Tippett, 2 straight games, he's done his job in that regard. I'm sure everyone would like to see a little bit more production. When you can from an elf. I get that. But, I mean, another reason. I don't think that's why South Carolina lost it. I think Tippett did his job tonight. And certainly, again, another bunt. So, Will Sanders comes out of the pen. Another game. We understand his success going into tonight against the Gators. Gives up a home run. I don't know what the plan will be for him moving forward this weekend. You would expect that they will use him at some point again. What would you say to Will? I mean, at this point, because again, you're hoping you're going to be able to get it to a 3rd game. You're hoping you're going to have to use Will out there at some point, whether it be in relief, whether it be start. I don't know what the game plan is going to be. What do you tell Will right now, though?
Well, I would just tell him, get ready to go, and I'm sure they're not planning on using him tomorrow. He threw 40 to 50 pitches tonight. Yeah. I doubt they're planning on using him tomorrow, but he's a competitor. He needs to get ready to go. If it comes down to it, I'm sure he's going to beg to get in that game, especially if it's a close one and we're on top.
Yeah, going off from that, Sanders, 46 pitches tonight, 27 for strikes, 2 1/3 innings of work, allowed 3 hits, 2 runs, 2 earned, had 3 strikeouts, facing 11 batters. So I say all that because, of course, the stat line the other night and both games over the weekend on regional, much different. Intern Joe, any other thoughts for Joey?
Yeah, Joey, I did want to ask, because obviously Jack Mahoney is probably the guy going tomorrow. How much does it help when you have a pitcher with that much kind of oomph behind him and celebrates like he does and brings the momentum with him and the excitement with him on the mound? How much does that help you guys out in the field, and then also too when you're hitting?
I think it's great for the whole team. I mean, when he's out there having success and being able to punch guys out and really commanding the zone and getting through the lineup multiple times, hoping he can go deep into the game. That builds a lot of energy for the team. We want our. I mean, in a perfect world, we would hit and hit and hit, and we wouldn't have to rely on arms so much. But Florida's got a really good staff, so it could be another close one tomorrow. Even that's not what Gamecock fans want to hear, but I mean, their staff's really good. But we have some good arms as well. We just need Mahoney to go deep in the game and turn it over to the bullpen when it's time.
Joey, I know you never had the opportunity to play at this new ballpark. You've only been here since 2021, of course. Gorgeous ballpark. Seemed like guys were hitting the ball very well today. And I was talking about this yesterday because Monty Lee was stressing it so much. And I don't know if you can really see it maybe here. That hitter's eye is just absolutely massive. And it seemed like that was something Monty was just going over like every time he was putting something in to the pitching machine yesterday. Like he was like reiterating, hey guys, this thing's friggin' massive out here.
Right.
This ballpark itself, I mean, just your overall thoughts on just what you saw from an offensive standpoint. I mean, do you think this is a hitter's ballpark? And obviously both teams have plenty of power. We saw it tonight. We saw it throughout the course of the season. How much can that help South Carolina tomorrow, though?
So I know it's a hitter's ballpark, not from experience. We didn't have the best of luck when we were down there for a 3-game set, but they've also made a lot of improvements. That's what I've noticed the crowd tonight. I think the last time I was down there, I think it was the 2013 season. There were probably 1,200 people there. And at the time it was a pretty solid matchup, but the atmosphere is great. It seems like the ball flies. And then the addition of that big batter's eye helping hitters see the ball a little bit better. I think we could see some runs put up tomorrow, hopefully on our side.
Yeah, absolutely. Joey, if you're this bullpen watching what Will Sanders did today, obviously he wasn't the best, couldn't get it done in clutch spots, but other than those two really like home runs, he looked pretty good. If you're the rest of that bullpen, how do you feel going into tomorrow knowing that you're going to have to step up if you're going to win, if you want to win the ball game?
Well, we obviously Sanders has a plus slider, but he got a lot of swings out of the zone. He came in, I think Caglione was his first hitter, right? And he threw 3 great pitches. Yeah, back foot slider there to finish that one off. I don't know if any lefties that's letting that go 0-2. Looks like a heater down the middle. Hadn't seen one yet, and then it just disappears. So he made he got a few swings and misses off of that. And I would use that to your advantage. I mean, those guys are up there swinging for the fences. Clearly, they got. I forget they showed it at the game on the stream tonight, but they got several hitters with 10+ homers. They're obviously chasing the long ball, so you got to use that to your advantage as a pitcher as well, and kind of capitalize on their aggressiveness and maybe use that to get ahead in some counts, and then it's in your favor after that.
We talked about it a little while ago, but just big picture of it, Joey. Knowing that you're in the situation where you have to win these next 2 games in order to keep your season alive, how difficult is it to just focus on the now, which is, hey, you can't even worry about game 3 yet. We have to worry about just taking care of business tomorrow because there might not even be a Sunday. How difficult is that? And what would you tell this team as they get ready for obviously an uphill challenge these next 2 days, hopefully?
I think that part's more difficult on a coach planning for a game 3, but at the same time, they're just worried about game 2 as well. And I think that's all the players should have on their minds right now. There's really nothing else. I mean, if you don't win tomorrow, you're on a bus ride back home from Gainesville after going 2 and out, and that's not a fun bus ride. I've been on a couple of those back in the day when I was at Carolina, and no one's looking forward to that. So they just got to worry about taking care of business tomorrow, stringing together quality at bats, good outings on the mound, and capitalizing on Florida mistakes.
Anything else, Joe?
Nah.
Now we got two Joes here tonight.
I know we got Joey, intern Joe, Joey. Yeah, I guess Joey, prediction for tomorrow, and I guess if they do win tomorrow and say they do take another game on Sunday, what's the potential for this team?
I mean, I think the potential is really high. I mean, we've seen it all year long. I know there were some injuries and all that, and production slowed down a little bit, but with a fairly healthy lineup, we can run the ball out of the yard and put up some numbers quick. I think we can see a few of those tomorrow, and that would completely change the game. I mean, we scored, what was it? Ended up being 5-4.
Yep.
2 home runs, 2 solo shots. So we get a few runners on and get a timely hit or double, homer, whatever it may be. I mean, we can stack up runs quick. We've shown that, especially last weekend. So I think the ceiling's really high. We just got to score more than them at the end of the day anyways, you know?
Yeah.
Well, Joey, we'll let you get out of here. We appreciate you hopping on a late edition of the DC Live post-game show tonight.
All right. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Joey.
All right. Once again, former Gamecock Joey Pankake joining us this evening. Now, Joe, look, you heard it from Joey. I mean, there's nothing really magical that you can say at this point. The bottom line is this team has to go into it tomorrow knowing we have to take care of business. We have to take care of business. And I was kind of surprised to hear him say that he feels like most of the thinking about Sunday goes back to just the coach. I'm sure a couple players will be thinking about, no question about it, but just focused on, hey, look, we're a player. We can't worry about Sunday. And hopefully this team won't, because, look, you're at this stage. And we'll go back. We'll talk about it. I saw it again, the interference. We'll go back. We'll talk about the interference call. This team showed enough at times to be the team that was going to win tonight. The problem was, and again, mentioning the interference, mentioning getting picked off, getting thrown out at second, little things like that, you can get away with in the regular season. You can get away with even last weekend in some of those blowout wins. They weren't going to be able to get away with that tonight. Florida's too good of a team. You're in a situation like you are in Supers. You know everything's going to magnifies by that much more. You can't give opportunities away. And I think when you look at it, obviously, Will McGillis hits that solo shot in the 9th inning to make the score even closer. That could have been the difference. That could have been the difference between South Carolina having an opportunity to force this one to go to extras or potentially even winning tonight.
Yeah, Mike, plain and simple. And like I said, I think tonight it sucks because this was one of those games where it was close. It was down to the wire. You did pretty much everything you needed to put yourself in a position to win this game. And then baseball just happens. I mean, again, Will Sanders just hung that. I think it was a curveball he was trying to throw, or a slider that he just didn't get all of, and it just came there and boom, right over the batter's eye, that big old batter's eye in center field. So mistakes like that down the stretch, can't have them. But the big regional game or super regional game like this one, luckily, we live to see another day. It's not do or die yet, so you take it and you rebound.
Try to mute the mic the best I can. Of course, we're in the section where they're bringing the leaf blowers out to be able to get the trash away. So bear with us here. I think, look, we'll have post game analysis coming up with Jack, and we'll hear from what Kingston had to say as well, the players. I think this team will remain the same, though, as far as the looseness. I feel like they were very loose. We put a video up before the game, them just kind of, fooling around in the dugout. This is a team that I expect to come out here tomorrow and treat this game as if it were, any other game. And I don't say that in a negative manner as I get hit with some pump swim from the leaf blowers. I don't say that in a negative manner, but I think that's the way you got to approach it. You can't treat it as if it's anything bigger. And the reason I say that is it's not the exact same, but I think back to when McGillis was out for the majority of the second half of the season, right? Being out for about, over a month and a half. We saw, from an offensive standpoint, how much tighter they played. They just didn't look like themselves. And we mentioned this last week, and I know we're going to probably continue to mention it as far as South Carolina is able to go this postseason. USC, with McGillis in the lineup, they just look like a team that doesn't have the pressure on them. They just look like a totally different team. But without having him, it changed them. This is the type of team, though, you need to play like tonight. You need to play like, okay, obviously McGillis will be in the lineup, but you have to play like that loose team. You can't play like that team that's tight. You can't play like that team that's putting extra pressure on yourself. Earlier in this game, I thought it would have been real easy for both teams, but especially for South Carolina. I thought it would have been real easy for them to come out here and look sluggish, right? You're coming down here, you made the travel, rain delay, but what do? McGillis, first at bat, second pitch of the game, smacks a home run. They did everything right early from an offensive standpoint. Yeah, I'm sure they're kicking themselves about the double play and the bases loaded, but they came out here and they showed that they can continue to have that success that they were able to do from an offensive standpoint last weekend in regional play. Are they going to be able to carry that over tomorrow? That's the big question, right? Are they able to do that? And then from a pitching standpoint, I mean, look, I was joking around with someone yesterday saying, all right, maybe this is going to be a high-scoring game. But honestly, at this point, everything's going to be magnified. You're not going to, you got to be careful about how you run the base pass. You got to take advantage of every little thing. I expect this one to be another low-scoring game tomorrow. So I say that because if you are able to get some production from an offensive standpoint, I mean, South Carolina had like 7 hits, I think, in the first 2 innings. It was something stupid. The pitching has to be at super level, if that makes sense, right? It was good at times, but it wasn't great. You need to be more consistent. And I'm sure Will Sanders will be the first to tell you that with his outing. He did some good things tonight. They need him to do a little bit more. Starter as well, Hicks, who's good, need to do a little bit more, though, to put him in a better situation. So I think that's what it comes down to tomorrow, Joe. I think it's going to be another low-scoring game. You got to capitalize when you are on the base path. You can't leave runners in scoring position. And from a pitching standpoint, you have to be ready for this game to be decided by less than 3 runs. I think it's going to be – I can see this being a game where both teams score around 5 runs or less. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game tomorrow.
Yeah, Mike, it's going to be one of the two, right? I think it's going to be by a combined score of 5 or less, or I think it's going to be a 12 combined score, 12, 13, 14. Like it's going to be a blow the barn doors off open. I think if you're South Carolina, you want to win a low-scoring game. Not that you have all of the arms you need for game 3. So I think that's big. But I don't know. I could see it going one of or either or. I don't necessarily think it's going to be like we saw tonight with 4 and 5. And another thing too. I mean, obviously you want to tune up the clutch pitching. But 2, I think hitting wise, you got to score more than 4 runs. I know Florida's starter was good, but you gotta. I mean, and South Carolina did a good job of jumping out to an early lead as well. But like, you gotta add to it, right? If you get out to an early lead, you gotta just add more to it. And South Carolina didn't do a great job of just adding those little runs here and there that just make the lead safe. And just every time it would get close, you just gotta add a run here or there, and just never let it get away from you. And South Carolina did. So gotta tune that up, and then obviously pitching, you want to just come up in the clutch better. I think that's all that boils down to. And, like Joey said, it doesn't really boil down to much. You came to Gainesville, or you go to Gainesville with one game or with one thing in mind: win 2 games. So that doesn't really change anything. You're there to win 2 games. So you pick your head up and you go play tomorrow. And same thing, same deal.
And Florida has some talented guys, man. I mean, they have some talented guys out here. Tomorrow, I expect them to throw everything out at this team, throw everything they have at South Carolina and try to put it away in 2 games, right? If you saw South Carolina with the way they approached things tonight with bringing Sanders in out of relief, you and I talked about it. Colin and I talked about it. We talked about it in our pregame show that we did. Nothing was going to surprise me with how they used him. Just because, as Colin mentioned many times this week on Gamecock Central, the success that he's had against Florida, it made sense. It would make sense to use him as a starter if you wanted to. However, only having these 2 games under his belt last weekend, coming back from injury, and how successful he was out of the pen, and how well the other guys did, it made sense if you wanted to bring him out of the pen as well. Nothing was going to surprise me with how they used Will Sanders tonight. And nothing's going to surprise me with how they decided to use him for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah.
So I say that because I think with this team, they threw everything they had at Florida tonight because they knew how big it would be to take game 1. They knew how big it would be. Do I feel like because of that, they're in a situation tomorrow where they're not going to be
No, because of how deep they are.
as deep? No. Because I look, and we'll pull up the stat
The
sheet here.
bullpen's deep,
too.
Mike. The bullpen is very, very deep. And that's why I think they had the confidence in throwing Sanders out there. Because you know how deep your bullpen is.
Well, we're looking at it right now. Just looking at the bottom where the pitching is for South Carolina. James Hicks, Will Sanders, Nick Proctor. Now, the thing about it is Proctor only went 2/3 of an inning. If South Carolina's in a situation where they need him tomorrow, I think you can see Proctor in there. I think you'll see Veach in it for sure tomorrow.
Yeah, Veach will be in there. Eli Jones.
Sanders, I don't expect, unless there's some type of marathon game, I don't expect to see Sanders out there. But I say all this because I felt like South Carolina was going to throw everything they had at Florida tonight. They did that to an extent from a pitching standpoint. Like you said, they have a lot of depth in their bullpen. You hope now, though, if Sanders isn't and again, Mark Kingston is talking right now, so we don't know exactly what the plans are. But you have to get the most out of your starter first and foremost. You have to get close to 6 innings at least. And then from there, if Veach is able to come in out of the pen and give you some quality innings like he has done this season. From a pitching standpoint, you should be okay. Offensively, like we said, there's not going to be a secret tomorrow. There's no secret with what this team has to do tomorrow.
Yep.
They have to capitalize on bringing guys in.
Absolutely.
Right? Looking at the stats tonight. Right? Will McGillis, another solid performance tonight. Piggybacking off of what he did last weekend. 3 RBIs. The home runs were massive. Being able to set the tone with that home run in the first inning. Second pitch of the game, for crying out loud. With Ethan Petrie, you hope, right? He's a Florida kid. You hope that he's able to continue to have the success that he had tonight. 2 hits, 3 at-bats, threw that walk as well. You hope that some of those nerves are out of him, though, too. I mean, it's natural, right? You come back, you're playing in your home state. It's not like he laid an egg tonight. He had a good night. But from a power standpoint, the Ethan Petrie that we've seen all season, you're hoping that he's able to find that tomorrow because they're going to need it. McGillis hit 2 home runs tonight. You can't just expect McGillis to be the one that's hitting home runs every frigging game. I expect McGillis to still have a good game tomorrow, right? You think I'm just looking at from an offensive standpoint tonight, right? Casas, you hope that you can get a little bit more from him tomorrow because you need it. I mean, when we go down the list, we're talking about Cole Messina, we're talking about Casas. You're talking about guys that, and I know Casas had the RBI, you need them to be playing at a different level tomorrow. You have to have them playing at a different level tomorrow. The type of level that we saw last weekend, right? So, look, the South Carolina team, nothing's going to surprise me with this team tomorrow. It's just not. I don't think this is the same South Carolina team that we saw for a good portion of the back half of the regular season. I don't. I felt like the way they fought tonight, I felt like the way that they were able to scrap together some runs, but in the end, they're going up against another very, very good team. There's a reason why Florida is the number 2 seed. And the fact that you swept them earlier this season, I'm sure many Gamecock fans would agree, it's not the same team that you played back in April. This isn't the same team that you run ruled on April 20th. This is a totally different team, and you saw that tonight. But with that being said, they're beatable. They're beatable.
Oh, yeah. They're 1,000% beatable, Mike. Absolutely. Like, I think tonight showed you that they're the same team that you played, I mean, for the most part, at the bare bones of it, they're the same team that you played in April. Now, what's different is this Florida team has been winning a little bit more. They've got a little bit more wind in their sails. They're feeling a little bit better. When they came into Founders Park, they weren't necessarily themselves. They hadn't found their identity yet. They'd been struggling a little bit, but still had been playing Florida-branded baseball. Now they are pretty much close to their ceiling, if not at their ceiling of how high they can go. So South Carolina, I mean, Mike, it's playoff baseball at the end of the day. Bring your best. Wouldn't get any more complicated than that.
So let's get into it, because I know so many people want to talk about it. The interference call.
You want to hit the ads first?
Hit the ads, Joe, because what we're going to do is
Sounds
we're going to we'll show this highlight, but hit the ad read first. We'll go with Liberty Tax.
Sounds good. Let me pull it up real quick. So, yeah, Liberty Tax, Mike. Liberty Tax ID is that uncertain feeling you get right before doing your taxes, but you don't have to go through it alone. Liberty Tax in Lexington, Irmo, and Columbia will clear out or walk you through the process, clear up any confusion, and guarantee you'll get the biggest possible refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're in a hurry for a refund, call the tax team at Liberty Tax. Fast, accurate, and guaranteed. On the other hand, if you think you might be owing Uncle Sam, talk to Liberty Tax Team to make sure you're not paying more than you should owe. They'll find every possible deduction for you. Locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood. Open 9 to 9 on weekdays and 9 to 5 on Saturdays with multiple service options. Start the Liberty Tax mobile app or through the desktop portal. Make an appointment or just walk in. Give a call to upload your tax documents. When you come in, your return will be ready to review and sign. Give them a call at 803-462-5576. Once again, that is 803-462-5576 for all of your tax needs.
And today's show is also brought to you by our good friend Clint Hammond at the Movement Mortgage. Clint has done a tremendous job of helping so many people throughout the Midlands as well as the entire state of South Carolina. If you are thinking about buying a new home, you're trying to figure out those rates. I know it's crazy right now. Clint can do what he did for our very own West Mitchell, as well as former Gamecock quarterback Perry Orth. He can make that process much easier for you. Give him a call at 803-771-6933. Once again, that is Clint Hammond of Movement Mortgage. You can see that number right above on the top of the screen throughout the entire show, as well as any other GC Live shows, because he has been a longtime supporter of not just Gamecock Central, but these GC Live shows that you see periodically. It's like Intern Joe is hopping around. We're going to get him back on here. We're going to talk about the interference play. Pull up the highlight. We'll talk about that. I understand the frustration. With umpiring and with how this game was called tonight. I'm not going to sit here and blame it on umpiring. I don't like doing that with officials. I don't like talking about that for football, basketball. I really don't. Not in a game like this, especially tonight, because they had their opportunities. They did. Doesn't mean you don't have to be pissed off about it. And when we talk about the play shortly, and we'll show it, I don't blame Wimmer. I don't. I mean, we could sit here and be like, all right, maybe you should have went back to first until the play was done. I don't know. We could sit here and do all that. But clearly, and where I was watching from the press box, I had a clear view of the first base umpire. And it looked like he was signaling to head to second, okay? So when I sit here and say, I understand what Wimmer was thinking, I think a lot of us did. Now, the angle from TV, it makes it a little bit different, and I understand that. So let's share this, Intern Joe. Okay? Let's share this. From Twitter. Okay? So this is Wimmer rounding first. All right? Now, when I sit here and say, maybe try to sell it a little bit more, all that stuff is, all right, all that's out the window. I don't even care about the collision. The collision, how much of the collision, I don't care about that. Okay? What I care about is this. The umpire, where he is, and the play gets cut off. This is someone that uploaded on Twitter. And I don't know if they showed it at home, Intern Joe. So help me out here.
They did, yeah.
But from where we were, he makes that initial point, okay? And then he came back and he was signaling fear. However, if you're Wimmer, you're on the ground, you feel like you got an obstruction call, and you see the umpire pointing directly at you, I figured it was obstruction because of that. Again, the collision, you want to call it that? Yes. Okay. Was it accident, incidental contact with the feet? All that aside, I don't really care about the collision. What I care about, because that aside, the way Wimmer reacted, he reacted as the umpire called obstruction. That's why that part of it is bigger than whether or not it was actually obstruction or not. That really means absolutely nothing, because Wimmer starts to walk over to second base. He starts to walk over. If he didn't think it was obstruction, he would have done one of two things. He either would have went back to first, or he would have hustled to second base. So it's not whether or not it was obstruction. It really isn't. It was the call. It was the call because Wimmer thought it was obstruction. He took his time, picked up his helmet. I think some Florida players actually thought it was too. With how, they really weren't reacting to it as quickly. Now they threw the ball in eventually and tagged him, but I think some of the Florida players looked confused as well because I think they thought it was going to be called obstruction. But again, where he was, and you can't see it in this video, that second motion, right? That second motion, he's pointing though. He's pointing at the first baseman. Because the second one is the fair call. But it was in the motion of Wimmer when Wimmer was laying on the ground.
Yeah.
What's your overall thoughts, Joe?
It changed the game. FG brought up a good point. The crowd was dead till the interference call happened. I think they were starting to get into it. FG, I wouldn't necessarily call them dead up until that point, but it was a big turning point. That's for darn sure. I would say they were reignited, and it certainly helped in their favor. But I don't know. When I saw the second angle of the one on Twitter, I think the ump is turned enough to kind of signal that it was a fair ball. But I think if you're Wimmer, right, in that position, you're used to it being like a dead ball, right? You're used to something happening. You're on your feet. You don't know how you fell. You were taking the right turn. It's not like you ran into his feet or he purposely ran into yours. You were taking the turn that you saw. And it's not Cags' fault either. I wouldn't necessarily – it's a simple run-in, but – Cags just the route that Cags took and the way that Wimmer was rounding the base, it didn't line up. That's not usually how they pass and whatnot. And when you're on your feet like that, you're supposed to make a spot decision, and I would assume Wimmer's staying at the base anyways. So
yeah,
after being on his feet, so had the ump said something, right? Like had he just fair ball, like just pointed towards that, I think there wouldn't have been any of this. But it's a stupid call, and the spot that it was in too was big spot there. So tough call in a tough spot.
Because they're not going to – the unfortunate reality is this. They're not going to overturn that. They just won't. The only way they would have overturned that is if the umpire had called obstruction, right? If he had called obstruction. His explanation, and obviously none of you guys at home, none of us up in the press box are going to be able to hear exactly what was said, but I'm sure we can all put two and two together, which is he goes over and says, Coach, I was calling fair. I wasn't calling obstruction. Well, why'd you point, Coach? I was calling, fair. I wasn't pointing at Wimmer. He's not going to overturn that. And that's a challenge. Even if you challenge anything, you're not going to be able to win that. And I don't think, Intern Joe, with the feet getting tangled, they're not going to overturn that.
No.
They're not going to overturn it.
They'd overturn it if Caglione stepped in Wimmer's way or something. But it's just
it was just bad luck.
Play.
Exactly. Number one is this. It was bad luck. Okay, it was bad luck in the fact that they called it the way they did. The way they called it, the way they did, with Wimmer getting up, that motion, that's what changed everything. That's what changed everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Whatever it was. So
I know it's a late night. We'll wrap things up. We appreciate everybody hopping on with us. Famously, Garnet, we appreciate you hopping on. Says I really blame officiating on the outcome of games, but if that play happens at Founders, Wimmer's taking second base. I can't sit here and disagree with you. I can't sit here and say you're wrong. The reality is they're in Gainesville. And that's the beauty of being able, obviously, to host. And it sucks. And, we can sit here and talk about the show coulda, would is right. South Carolina had their opportunities tonight. And I think tonight is a microcosm of the entire season, which is they had their opportunities down the stretch not to be in this situation to have to go to Gainesville. But the bottom line is they're here. They have to win tomorrow. They have to win the next two to keep their season alive. They did enough tonight to hopefully show you that this team isn't the same team that they were the second half of the regular season. They showed fight. They showed some offense. They showed from a pitching standpoint that they can get out of some big situations. But at the end of the day, you have to play your best baseball right now. And South Carolina left too much on the table. They left too much on the table. They were good tonight. They weren't great. They had to be great in order to win this game tonight. They had to. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's tough to take game one of a super going into Gainesville like that. It was going to need to be a perfect game overall for South Carolina to take this game, and it just wasn't. Plain and simple.
Well, disappointing night here in Gainesville. Give you guys one last shot of the field as they prep it for tomorrow. I will say this. I know maybe some people won't care about it, but I give a lot of credit to this grounds crew. It was, I wouldn't call it a tsunami by any means, but that rain was coming down hard. The lightning was brutal, which obviously you can't control that. But they did a great job, and a lot of credit to them, but a lot of credit to just how they built this ballpark. And it's the way it should be, right? You have a ballpark that has only been around. This is its third season. It was built in 2021. It should be able to have the type of drainage that it has. And it did a tremendous job of being able to get this stadium as quickly ready to go for game one. It was an electric game, electric energy here. South Carolina needs to find a way to bring some of that electricity they had at the plate, especially with with McGillis tomorrow, to be able to continue to find a way to fight. And I think the South Carolina team, I expect them to come out and be the team that we've seen the last week, to be the team that we saw from the beginning of the season. I don't think this is going to be the team that we saw towards the end of the regular season. I think this is a team that's going to come out ready to go. He's Intern Joe. I'm Mike Huber. We appreciate everyone that has tuned in tonight for tonight's GC Live post-game show, as well as former Gamecock Joey Pankake, who joined us. If you missed any of our show and you want to watch it in its entirety, I understand disappointing loss, but tomorrow is a new day. Head on over to Gamecock Central's YouTube page, and you can watch it there. And be sure to also subscribe for free if you haven't. Or if you're a podcast listener, head on over to wherever you listen to your podcast, and you can be able to listen to this show in its entirety as well. Once again, I'm Mike Yuba. He's Intern Joe. We'll be back at it tomorrow as soon as Game 2 wraps up. And hopefully we're talking about South Carolina getting ready for a Game 3. Good night from Gainesville.